overdose. And we have to get together on this, and we have to get on the front end of this. And I would love to work across the aisle on this to protect our kids. How many school kids do you see now vaping? And it's not only, I believe a vape has 20 cigarettes, but you know, that's one vape is 20 cigarettes, I believe it is, but also what they could be laced with, because so many of them, the majority of them, are manufactured in China.
Sure, and if you need additional resources, please let us know as you're going through the process. And I'm going to change gears one more time on you. Under the Biden administration, there was a lot of confusion created when parts of the DOJ began treating software developers like financial institutions. Even when they did not hold or control anyone's money, they were simply building the technology. That uncertainty made it harder for Americans to build, innovate here at home. Earlier this year, the Deputy Attorney General issued a memo entitled Ending Regulations by Prosecution, a clear break from the Biden administration's approach. And I think it's important that that's a good step in the right direction. But can you talk a bit about how the DOJ is now putting that memo into practice, especially when it comes to making sure that people are just writing the software and don't control the user's funds, we don't want them treated as an unlicensed money, or they're not money transmitters. So.
Yes, and we're doing everything we can to protect the American people on that, and I would refer everyone to Deputy Attorney General Blanche's memo, and we're working as hard as we can on that topic.
Because we want to lead the way in the space on that, so we appreciate the help. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back 10 seconds.
Gentleman yields back. We'll recognize the gentleman from Arizona for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of UCs.
Gentleman can proceed.
Thank you. Bombshell new docs show Trump called police about Epstein in 2006.
Without objection.
Kamala Harris defends Biden administration decision not to release Epstein files.
Without objection.
Why weren't they released during the Biden administration?
Without objection.
House Democrat Stacey Plaskett exchanged texts with Epstein during 2019 congressional hearing.
Without objection.
New York judge allows Epstein victims' claims against Plaskett to proceed.
Without objection.
Hakeem Jeffries solicited funding from Epstein in 2013 after financier was convicted child sex offender.
Without objection.
Jeffrey Epstein was invited to dim fundraising dinner and to get to know Hakeem Jeffries by firm working with Brooklyn's Barack.
Without objection.
An email from Leslie Groff to Jeffrey Epstein concerning Hakeem Jeffries fundraising. Epstein file says Biden was replaced in 2019, question mark?
Without objection.
Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized. Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Ms. A.G. Bondi. I agree with you. Our top priority should be protecting Americans. In my past life in the California State Legislature, I did a lot of work on solving sex crimes, passing legislation to update our codes. And I found that the biggest challenge to solving sex crimes is reporting them. Victims have to have the guts to stand up to report those sex crimes. But it's not easy. It's the most unreported sex crime there is. Crime there is sex crimes. It's painful, humiliating. And a lot of time the victims don't think anything's gonna come out of their reporting these crimes. Then we have adults who as children were molested, boys and girls who will live in silence for the rest of their life. I believe the Epstein files are just one of many sex rings, sex crimes taking place in our society today. I hear 1,200 Epstein victims, some additional victims as young as 9 to 10 years old. The challenge I have today, what bothers me today about this hearing, Madam AG, is what's the message we're sending out there on Main Street? Shouldn't ask a question I don't know an answer to, but I'm gonna ask the victims behind you right now. First, can you please stand up? And then, can you please raise your hand if you think after everything you've heard today, you feel that our AG, the feds, have your back? Do we have your back? Raise your hand if you're confident that we got your back. And that's the issue, Madam AG. We've got to make sure that victims stand up and report the crimes. Otherwise, we're going to be taking a step backwards. Today, AI, cyber, social media, the new realm for people to be hurt, attacked sexually. These are the areas I'd welcome the opportunity to work with you on. It's not your problem, it's not my problem, it's our problem. But to have redacted files that are not showing us the names of these predators is wrong. These are very powerful people. This was a very expensive business, and we don't know who they are. I would imagine they're very prominent Republicans, very Republican Democrats, and we are covering up for them. We got to know what's going on out there, Madam AG. It looks like you want to say something. I'm going to give the opportunity to address my statement.
I look forward to working with you on any crimes involving child sex predators, children, and also cyber crimes. That is a tremendous problem now throughout our country. AI, you are correct. AI is causing great problems online we're working on that though. AI is an incredible tool, but it also can be fraught with peril with victims of crime. I've experienced that with someone I know who we've been trying to help. I look forward though to working with you on that and all
Madam,
cyber crimes. Can I?
Please, go ahead.
And as I said before, to any victims, we ask them to come forward to our office, and we want to work with them. I have never not worked with a victim, and I believe I've actually spoken to several of the
Madam,
victims'
if I can reclaim my time, I only have a minute.
Behind me.
If I can reclaim my time, I just think we start out by making sure those redactions are unredacted, those Epstein files, to make sure that the public, according to the law, following the law, that those names in those files are made public. We have to make sure we tell those predators there is no place for them to hide, and if they commit the crime, they're gonna fry for it. It starts with showing us the names of the perpetrators in the Epstein files.
May I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. So if any man's name was redacted that should not have been, we will, of course, unredact it. If a victim's name was unredacted, please bring it to us and we will redact it. We were given 30 days to review and redact and unredact millions of pages of documents. Our
Madam,
error rate is very low, but there are
victims are
always
right behind you. We've got to convince them
sides,
that we're doing a good job
doing everything we can to help
protecting
the
them.
victims. We will
Thank
do
you,
everything
Mr.
we can.
Chair, I'm out of time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Madam Attorney General. I wanted to return to a point that the chairman raised at the beginning of this hearing, which is these jurisdictions that refuse to honor detainer requests from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, often called sanctuary jurisdictions. Now, I know that you are not involved directly in immigration operations per se, but you do deal with the legal issues surrounding these jurisdictions. So let's say we have someone who's here illegally, who has committed a crime that, like the thousands of people you mentioned in California, murderers, sexual predators, drug traffickers. If that individual is in detention in a jurisdiction that has a sanctuary policy where they do not honor ICE detainers versus in any other jurisdiction where they do, how does the nature of apprehending that person, how does the nature of ICE's involvement in that operation differ in those two circumstances?
Well, I believe you've seen that in Minnesota, where people were not cooperating with us. I believe there a lot of local law enforcement did want to cooperate, but we are doing everything in our power to arrest and deport illegal criminal aliens, and that is not going to stop under Donald Trump's administration. You know, why sanctuary cities are so dangerous, what we've seen in Minneapolis. Where do all the criminals go? The gangs, TDA, MS-13, where are they gonna go? They're gonna go to a sanctuary jurisdiction because they believe they're protected, and that's not fair to the citizens of those cities.
Yeah, and this is a point that there at least used to be a lot of consensus on. The idea that, you know, it's better to do a handoff to the immigration authorities in a custodial setting rather than releasing them where they have to be apprehended in the community. This is Alejandro Mayorkas. when he was before this committee, not exactly a paragon of border security, but he said, "I do not consider it in the service of public safety to release an individual into the community when that individual can be released to Immigration and Customs Enforcement for prompt removal." Now, his words are one thing, his actions are another. But when you have jurisdictions across the country, including my state of California, doing systematically precisely the thing that even Alejandro Mayorkas said threatens public safety, I mean, what does that say to you?
It's a danger to the citizens of your community, and thank you for fighting to protect them.
Absolutely. And you know, we're having this conversation right now in relation to Homeland Security funding. And I believe there are some common sense reforms that have been proposed that folks on both sides would agree make sense. But those reforms have to go hand in hand with reforming this reckless practice of refusing to cooperate, refusing to honor detainers, and declaring oneself to be a sanctuary. So I'm hoping that we can find bipartisan support for what has long been a bipartisan principle. I want to go to a second topic, which is the school board memo, which I know that you have rescinded. And it was initially promulgated by Attorney General Garland when he came into office with President Biden, essentially opening an investigation into parents who were showing up at school board meetings and expressing their views on COVID policies, masks, various other issues, and using the full apparatus of federal law enforcement and counterterrorism to go after these parents. Now, he said this was because there was an increase of threats, but when even his own FBI director, Christopher Wray, was before this committee, he said there was no evidence of an increase in threats. Yet nevertheless, when I asked him if he regretted the memo, Attorney General Garland said there was absolutely nothing wrong with the memo. Now, I take it you disagree with that, having now rescinded it?
Absolutely. That was one of the main focuses of President Trump and this administration. We will protect parents at school boards. We will protect children in schools. We will protect parents' rights for their children's education in our school system in this country. We will protect Christians. We will protect everyone who wants to freely protest. If Christians want to protest in front of an abortion clinic without being arrested, they will do so.
Thank you very much. And finally, I thank you for your efforts to step up the detection and rooting out of fraud. My home state is California. Any idea if there might be any fraud going on in California?
Well, we are establishing, as you have heard, a fraud unit, and I'm sorry you're having to deal with that in your state, but the cavalry's coming. And we have Colin McDonald, who is hopefully will be confirmed soon. We're working on Minneapolis. I don't know if you were sitting here when I said that, but California was right up there. I'm sorry to say for both sides of the aisle that California is right up there with fraud. It's out of control, but we are coming to your rescue. Donald Trump is coming to the rescue.
Well, thank you very much. And unfortunately, I think you'll find that what's happening in California pales in comparison to what's been going on in Minnesota. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Actually, I think the gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I'm here. On September 25th, President Trump signed a memorandum known as NSPM 7, purporting to address domestic terrorism. But Americans across the political spectrum were immediately alarmed by the memo's blurring of the line between unlawful conduct and constitutionally protected speech and activity, as well as its call to investigate, prosecute, and dismantle groups that the president and Stephen Miller described without evidence as, quote, an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. Now, counterterrorism experts were further alarmed by the administration's singular focus on left-wing extremism, combined with the sudden deletion from the DOJ website of decades of research and law enforcement analysis, which had concluded that right-wing extremism poses the greatest terrorism threat to Americans. The president's memo broadly and vaguely links violent conduct to ideologies, and it targeted specifically anti-American, anti-Christian, and anti-capitalist beliefs, as well as, quote, hostility to so-called traditional American views on family, religion, and morality, end quote. President Trump has repeatedly and openly, however falsely, tried to brand his political opponents with these sentiments listed in his memo. But as you know, as a lawyer, holding beliefs that the White House disagrees with is not a crime. And the statute defining domestic terrorism requires criminal acts, not just thoughts and ideas. That's why legal experts, nonprofit leaders, religious freedom and civil rights advocates immediately raised the alarm that the new presidential directive was a politically motivated attack on civil society designed to silence those who disagree with the administration. So, Ms. Bondi, Section 3 of that memo directed you, as Attorney General, to submit to the President and Stephen Miller a list of groups or entities whose members are engaged in acts that meet the definition of domestic terrorism. And then on December 4th, you directed the FBI to work with a variety of law enforcement entities to compile a list of groups and entities engaged in such acts by January 3rd, 2026, and to update that report every 30 days thereafter. So can we assume that you or persons under your direction at the Department of Justice have prepared that list of groups or entities who are designated as domestic terrorist organizations? And I just remind you, that's a yes or no question. Did you prepare the list?
I'm not going to answer it yes or no, but what I will say is I know Antifa is part of that. I will talk to you about that.
I'm reclaiming my time. I asked you whether you
an Antifa member was
list.
arrested in Minneapolis federal
I'm reclaiming
court for
my
cyber
time.
stalking.
Did you
they
have
ask a question
list?
and don't want an answer.
The answer is yes or no.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania. Gentlelady can proceed.
Okay. So will you commit to providing this committee with any list of organizations that you have recommended be designated as domestic terrorist organizations?
We will comply with the law in all matters.
Will you commit to provide this committee with your list of entities that you recommend be designated as domestic terrorist organizations?
I'm not going to commit to anything to you because you won't let me answer questions.
Okay, well then we do understand that your current position is that you have a secret list of people or groups that you are accusing of domestic terrorism, but you won't share it with Congress. And I'd remind you that when the US government designates an entity as a foreign terrorist organization, it must report that to Congress and to the entity, because the government can make a mistake and the entity has the opportunity to contest it. So your position seems to be that if you falsely designate an American or an American organization as a terrorist group, there's nothing they can do about it. I think we get it. You don't want to answer the question.
No, you don't get anything regarding public safety.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you for the insult. It's clear you didn't come to Congress prepared to answer questions that the American people have every right to have answered. But if you were to prepared to answer truthfully, here's what we expect the facts to show. The administration is keeping lists of Americans who the White House says are engaged in domestic terrorism. Those lists could include Americans who have not committed any acts of terrorism, but simply disagree with this administration, people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And your list may include clergy, elected officials, and members of indivisible groups across the country. And those lists likely don't include Proud Boys or Oath Keepers who were actually convicted. Americans have never tolerated political demagogues who use the government to punish people on an enemies list. It brought down McCarthy, it brought down Nixon, and it will bring down this administration as well.
And you're right.
Back.
That's why we're so glad they rescinded the
That's
memorandum
right.
targeting parents. For goodness sake, as the gentleman from California just pointed out in his 5 minutes, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5
May I
minutes.
respond very briefly to her statement?
Well, I think we can do that
Okay.
probably on one of our members' time.
Okay, thank you. I don't want that to get away. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victim's lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr. Chairman. This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So
yes.
I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you in.
This
guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen,
you need to
I want you to watch the video.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim time
this is bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way you want.
This goes over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to know
transparent-
at what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wexner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
She didn't answer the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
point of
Mr.
order.
Chairman, could she answer the question?
Chairman, I was wondering,
The gentlelady's allowed, the Attorney General's allowed to respond the way she wants to respond to any member's questions, Republican, Democrat.
All right, I have unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized for a UC.
All right, this is an example. I'm submitting these 302 forms that are entirely redacted, even when you go to look at them.
Without objection.
I'm submitting a witness statement that implicates Les Wexner.
Without objection.
I'm submitting an article from the New York Times that the DOJ released nude photos and
Without objection.
identifiable pictures of the victims. I'm submitting a letter from AG Bondi to Kash Patel, imploring him to quit keeping the files when you found out that they were keeping files from you, because they're still redacting files that you.
Chairman, are we going to
Without
recess for votes?
Yes, we are.
I'm submitting for unanimous consent a document of 17 individuals who've resigned because of the Epstein files.
Without objection. Just want to check on how much time we have left in votes, but one thing I've learned here of late that they'll wait on us. How much time do we have? Oh, they just called it. Okay. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by saying I appreciate what you said, Attorney General Bondi, and you said it to me personally, that you take the personal security of every member of Congress seriously and that people can contact you about that. And in these times, that's a very serious matter. So I thank you for that. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7 of the Constitution is the Domestic Emoluments Clause. And it says that the president is limited to his salary in office and cannot receive any other money from the federal government while he's in office. It cannot be increased by $1. This president is the first president in U.S. history who has repeatedly sued the federal government for $230 million for the judicial search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, which was perfectly lawful and was never struck down. But now he's suing the IRS for $10 billion. He's suing the IRS for $10 billion, which I think is around 80% of its annual budget, because his tax returns were leaked. And they were illegally leaked by a private contractor who actually is in prison now, Charles Littlejohn. But he wants $10 billion. Now, I want to ask you the question of whether you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for you to settle that $10 billion case or any of the other claims that the president has made against the government. He himself has remarked, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the deal, right? And he says, I kind of have to work it out with myself. Do you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for the president to work out a deal from people who are his subordinates under his unitary executive theory to get money in one of these cases?
I'm not going to discuss pending litigation.
Okay, so theoretically you're saying because his privacy rights were violated in that tax case, and they were. I'm with the president on that. I mean, his Mar-a-Lago thing is ridiculous, but there's no doubt that his tax returns, despite the fact that he promised to release them, despite the fact that every other president released the tax returns, he suffered embarrassment when it showed that he hadn't paid taxes for several years, and he had a right for that not to happen. Now, I want to turn back to the Epstein survivors, because President Trump may have been a little bit embarrassed by the release of those tax returns. How much do you think the claims of these survivors are worth? As the good congressman from Kentucky just pointed out, there were lots of survivors who had decided, for reasons of their own, never to release their names. That determination was represented to people in Congress, and we built it into our federal law that their names could not be released, and yet you published their names, their phone numbers, their addresses, personally identifying information. If Donald Trump can get $10 billion theoretically from the Department of Justice, how much should these people get for a far worse violation of their privacy rights and a far greater danger established to them in their lives?
Do you even know who Chase Mulligan is? You're so obsessed with, you
Okay,
don't, do you?
I'm going to teach you the rules again. You're the Attorney General of the United States. We have rules here.
You're obsessed with him.
You're the Attorney General of the United States.
With
And the rules,
obsessed with Donald Trump. You
No.
have Trump derangement syndrome.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like my time
Mulligan will be
restored. I'd like my
sentenced
time
next week
restored.
in your district. In your district, and
Stop
you
the
don't
clock.
even know about it, about keeping children
Time belongs
safe
to
from
the gentleman.
online predators.
Time belongs to the gentleman from Maryland. The gentleman can proceed.
Yeah, and I want the whole country to look at this. Because this is the Attorney General of the United States, whose job is law enforcement. We've never had a witness who has misunderstood our rules and been unable to conform his or her conduct to our rules before. We have only 5 minutes, and so we use our time to ask you specific questions.
How long are you giving me to
Excuse
answer?
me, I'm not yielding to you right now. I'd like that second restored too. So, Ms. Bondi, the way it works is we ask you a question and you answer it. And if you go off on a wild goose chase, another tangent, you start reading statistics or you start talking about stuff going on in our district. And by the way, I invite you to my district. Come to my district, but that's not what we're here to do today. Okay? So, and you do that, then we're allowed to say we reclaim our time. At that point, you have to be quiet. You have no choice. You have to be quiet. So I hope you understand the rule at this point. Now, here's what I want to ask you. You're in law enforcement. We've seen all kinds of evidence of crimes. And when we go over to the Department of Justice for the 4 computers for every member of Congress, we see more evidence of crimes. Will you create a joint task force of the Department of Justice and governors and state attorney generals and district attorneys across the country to investigate the crimes that have taken place against these victims and more than 1,000 like them? The DOJ is not doing its job. Will you create a task force with state and local law enforcement to make that happen?
Gentlelady can respond if she wants to.
Thank you, Chairman. He called Chase Mulligan a wild goose chase and didn't even know who he was. He is a defendant in your own
Chairman,
district who
Mr.
preyed
Chairman.
on girls.
Mr.
ages
Chairman.
15
Well,
to
you know what?
17
If he were part of the
in
Epstein
social
investigation, you wouldn't
media
do anything
and
about it.
online chat rooms and committed sextortion. Yet he didn't even know in your tiny little district who he was.
Mr. Chairman, she's embarrassing you.
He's about to be
This is your
fined.
committee, and she is embarrassing
Shame
you.
on you.
The time of the gentleman has expired. I would remind the committee that last Congress, Secretary Mayorkas was here numerous times, and he wouldn't answer our questions, even when we sent them to him ahead of time in writing. So that's what we've had to deal with. I think the Attorney General is doing just fine. We have votes shortly. I will go to the gentleman from Virginia, and then we will take a break to head to the floor.
I thank the chairman, Attorney General Bondi. Thank you for being here. And I wanted to thank you for your work at DOJ in restoring the rule of law, encouraging transparency surrounding Jack Smith's partisan investigations into President Trump, declassifying information about the Russia collusion hoax, cracking down on sanctuary jurisdictions, and establishing the National Fraud Enforcement Division. Let me first go to securing the border and immigration enforcement. Our new governor has recently rescinded 287G cooperation between the state and ICE. Can you talk about, have you evaluated the public safety impact, how that would affect safety in Virginia to withdraw that support and what that would do to criminal activity involving illegal immigrants in Virginia?
Yes, it would be detrimental. And as you know, Congressman, one of the top members of MS-13 in the entire country was living in Virginia, in a suburb, among all of us, living not even probably half an hour away from where we are now. And the cooperation previously with the governor, with the members of the state of Virginia, helped catch him and take him off our streets. An illegal MS-13, one of the heads for the entire country, was living in Virginia. And it's a shame that that's happening now. And thank you for talking about it, because we're going to keep America safe. And when people feel like they can flee to these cities and states and be safe, they can't, because Donald Trump is going to protect Americans. We're going to protect the citizens there, whether or not the governors, the mayors are going to do it or not. But President Trump is. We're going to keep Americans safe from violent gang members like he's been doing this last year.
We appreciate that. We appreciate your work to make that happen in Virginia and keep Virginia safe. I want to move on to the fraud enforcement division that you've established. My understanding is that this initiative is intended to centralize, coordinate enforcement of fraud laws related to government programs. You've talked about Minnesota, you've talked about California. Would this affect Virginia as well? Because we have fraud in Virginia as well.
Absolutely, and we look forward to working with you.
Would this affect things like long-term care accountability, senior living facilities engaged in Medicaid fraud, including systemic overbilling practices and the misappropriation of taxpayer-funded benefits?
That is exactly what it's set up to help.
Okay. I know that whether it was related to fraud specifically or another subject, that under the Biden administration, there was a sitting member of the Virginia General Assembly under investigation. Is that investigation still ongoing? Can you speak to that?
I can't discuss that.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. Last year, President Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill into law, which included the Hearing Protection Act, part of it that was sponsored by myself and Congressman Clyde. It reduced the national firearms tax, $200 tax on suppressors and short-barreled firearms, to zero. And while the tax has been eliminated, the NFA's registration and paperwork requirements remain in effect. And your DOJ has said that that would, even though the tax was reduced to zero, that the registration requirement is still somehow necessary, even though with regard to Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, when that mandate was, when that tax penalty was reduced to zero, you decided that the mandate was no longer necessary. How are you justifying the existence of this registry?
Congressman, that's pending litigation right now.
It is, and I would hope
Yes,
we would
and I can't
reconsider.
discuss it.
You would reconsider that. I yield back.
The gentleman yield? The gentleman
I yield to the chairman.
I think that Attorney General Bondi, why did Jack Smith have to pay some secret source $20,000 of taxpayer money? Do you know the answer to that?
I can't discuss anything on that matter, but that's a good question, Chairman Jordan.
Well said. It's a good question because he subpoenaed just about every Republican in this town, got half the Congress's phone numbers if you were a Republican. But he has to pay some secret source a bunch of taxpayer money. We'd like to know, the committee would like to know how many other sources he paid. Was it more than $20,000? Why he had to do those things? We'd like to know when you can, if you could get that information to the committee. I think when you think about the guy who was trying to put the President of the United States in prison, ridiculous as that whole thing was, we'd kind of like to know the answer to that if you could. And with that, we're going to stand in recess. We will go as quickly as we can and vote. We have 2 quick votes on the floor, and we will be back. There is actually some lunch if you all need it. We have for our members, and since you're back here, you can have some. We normally have plenty.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll take a recess.
Before you gavel out, can I ask for unanimous consent to enter to a record the article entitled Inside Trump's DOJ, dated October 16, 2020?
Without objection, we stand in recess. And the gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here. Attorney General Bondi, 6 days ago, you posted online, quote, "If you come for law enforcement, the Trump administration will come for you," end quote. I want to show you just a brief video. It's about 30 seconds, and I'll ask you a couple questions about it.
You guys are disgusting, man. Hey, you guys are disgusting. I'm former law enforcement. You're disgusting. You are the Nazi. You are the Gestapo. You can't see it because you're chasing your pension, right? Your pension, your retirement, right? That's what runs your life, your retirement.
The sad thing is they're not even going to get their pension because it's going to be worthless.
And shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Attorney General Bondi, that man works for you now, right?
Who was that, Congressman?
The man in that video, the one who was in the police-worn body cam footage, the one allegedly yelling, "Kill him," at police officers on January 6th, his name is Jared Wise.
He does work for us.
He works for you at the Department of
he
Justice.
does. He does.
This is an individual whom a federal grand jury indicted for 2 felonies and 4 misdemeanors related to his participation in the attack on January 6th. One of those charges was forcibly assaulting, resisting, opposing, impeding, intimidating, and interfering with police with the intent to commit another felony. This is who you choose as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America to hire at the Department of Justice. Someone on video yelling, "Kill him," at police officers, right?
I believe he was pardoned by President Trump.
Oh, he was pardoned. You're right. You're right. Pardoned by President Trump for his offense. Pardoned for yelling, "Kill him," at police officers. And yet you expect hardworking police officers across the country to believe that you take law enforcement seriously. You could imagine the reaction of so many folks across the country hearing the chief law enforcement officer of the United States refuse to even condemn what that individual whom you've now hired did. But in any event, let's talk a little bit about some of the other divisions within the Department of Justice and what's happened over the last year. You're familiar with the public integrity section of the DOJ's criminal division. I think it's referred to as PIN. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know which presidential administration under which the PIN was first created?
I can tell you what administration that the weaponization was ended under.
I'll reclaim my time. This wasn't a trick question.
You don't get to
Madam Attorney
reclaim
General.
your time.
Madam Attorney General.
Because I don't like it.
Mr. Chairman, will you explain to the witness that he does reclaim his time?
Because I don't answer a question to your satisfaction?
Mr. Chairman. Madam Attorney General, the time belongs to the gentleman from Colorado.
The president under which PIN was created was Gerald Ford. It was created after Watergate. I'm not asking a question, Madam Attorney General. The administration under which it was created was Gerald Ford. When you first started as the Attorney General of the United States, there were 35 people working in that office. There are now 2 people working in that office because you have gutted it. How many people work for the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team in the criminal division today?
Can I answer the question about PIN?
I've asked you a question. How many
You've
people
asked
work?
me a question, but you don't
How
want
many
the answer.
people work
I'm not
for the
gonna answer your
National
questions the way you
Cryptocurrency
want.
Enforcement Team? You won't answer how many
I'll
people?
answer PIN.
You.
PIN will not be
you know
weaponized.
What? You know what?
What's
Madam
funny
Attorney
about
General,
this?
I'll say to the chairman.
What's funny about this?
Chairman, you know what the answer is? And I think I understand
funny
why the
about
Attorney General
this?
does not want to answer the question. Because you eliminated the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team last year. So I understand why you don't want to tell the American people who works there.
Yeah, I
no one
understand
works
why
there
you don't want to
anymore,
talk about
Madam
Mohammed
Attorney
Solomon
General.
in
So,
your district.
In any event,
who
I would
murdered people.
Mr. Chairman, will you stop the clock so his time is not wasted by the witness?
I've been very generous with allowing extra time when we have these little disputes.
I understand.
You got the time, Mr. Goose?
I might as well ask the chairman these questions.
I'd be happy
because
to answer
what is
some of your questions.
What's profound, the questions I've
Profound?
asked,
The crime in your
I've
district.
asked, Mr. Chairman, are not trick questions. They're not gotcha questions. They're actually basic questions about how the Department of Justice functions and the unwillingness of this Attorney General to answer them in good faith. When a member of Congress asks how many people work at the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team and the Attorney General refuses to answer it, it is not a coincidence. It's because she eliminated the team. Why? Because her boss, the President of the United States, is making money hand over fist, $1.4 billion over the course of the last year through cryptocurrency holdings. I think what is happening at the Department of Justice is a disgrace, Mr. Chairman, and I would urge you to gain control of this hearing. With that, I yield back to balance my time.
Yeah. I would ask the gentleman, does he agree with the standing up of the Deputy Attorney General for dealing with fraud? That's something that's happened in this administration, first time. You talked about Penn. That happened with this Justice Department.
We're talking about this committee.
Mr. Chairman, had you answered the question, had the Attorney General answered the question in that way, perhaps this hearing would have some modicum of resembling something that has typically been fairly conventional, an oversight hearing of the Department of Justice.
The gentleman's
That is
time
not
has
this.
expired. The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized for 5 minutes.
Attorney General Bondi, I want to express my gratitude to the President, you and your team for your continued efforts against extreme anti-energy policies taken by states and cities that serve only to increase costs on the American people. This is an issue of great concern for Congress as well as the consumers. At the behest of networks of non-governmental organizations and anti-growth activists, Democratic-controlled states and cities are enacting laws and pursuing coordinated lawsuits that would impose retroactive liability on energy producers for past global emissions based on speculative future climate change harms. The proponents of these plans call them climate superfund laws, but in reality, that is simply window dressing for taxes and fees imposed on consumers and businesses that don't even have a presence in these states or communities. But if you look at the billions of dollars they hope to gain from these efforts, the real goal here is to increase their already mismanaged state budgets by imposing fees on consumers and businesses in energy-producing states such as the state of Wyoming. I would describe this as the tobacco litigation on steroids. Vermont has enacted such a law, and another has recently gone into effect in New York. Similar laws are under consideration in a number of other states. Clearly, this problem is spreading. Would you agree that Congress has not authorized states to impose retroactive liability against energy producers and lawful carbon emissions?
Yes.
And would you also agree that protecting consumers is a core part of the DOJ's mission?
Absolutely.
Would you further agree that combating state policies that seek to hide and shift the true cost of programs like these onto consumers fits within your mission?
Yes.
So, Attorney General Bondi, fossil fuels are the foundation of the U.S. economy, and the recent winter storms underscored that gas, coal, and oil remain essential to grid reliability and heating our homes. Can you confirm that the DOJ is fully committed to using all available legal tools to stop these state and local level attacks on domestic energy production?
Congresswoman, we are committed to that, and so is the entire administration. We talk about that a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The President's April 2025 executive order directed the DOJ to identify and act against state laws that burden U.S. energy production. What concrete actions has the DOJ and the administration more broadly taken to carry out this directive?
Well, we filed 4 lawsuits. We're filing multiple lawsuits. Many things are pending within this office to carry that out.
Okay. States continue to invent new causes of action to pursue state climate lawfare, as is evidenced by Michigan's recent novel claim related to antitrust violations. The city of Boulder, Colorado has also filed such a lawsuit, despite refusing my challenge that they actually forego the use of fossil fuels if they disagree with them so much. Does the Department of Justice agree that these novel approaches require a federal response, and will the department pursue such an approach?
Yes, Congresswoman, and we'd be happy to talk to you more about that.
Wonderful,
Yes.
Thank you. Multiple climate lawsuits are now advancing toward trial, even in states that rely on those energy forms to provide heat and electricity for their citizens. In fact, in any community, they all rely upon fossil fuels in some fashion. Is the department actively considering intervention to protect federal supremacy over interstate emissions and energy policy?
Yes, we'd be happy to discuss that with you.
Thank you. And clearly, this is an area in which Congress has a role to play. To that end, I'm working with my colleagues in both the House and Senate to craft legislation tackling both these state laws and the lawsuits that could destroy energy affordability for consumers. To that end, are there any authorities or tools that DOJ and the administration don't currently have at their disposal that would be helpful in that effort that Congress could adopt?
Well, we work with multiple agencies throughout the administration, but I'd be happy to talk to you about that more.
Wonderful,
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate your effort in this regard.
And may I have 20
Please.
seconds of your time
Please.
before to address something?
Yes.
Thank you. Your colleague, Senator Neguse, didn't want to talk about crypto because he said I was a disgrace talking about crypto because he didn't want to talk about the tremendous crime in his jurisdiction. He voted no on preventing violence against women by illegal aliens. Yet, on June 1st, 2025, Mohammed Solomon attacked members of the group Run for Their Lives in Boulder, Colorado, where an 82-year-old woman sustained burns on over half of her body and eventually died from her injuries.
I believe that she was a Holocaust survivor.
She was.
The time the gentlelady has expired,
I yield back.
the gentlelady yields back, and the gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Bondi, as the Florida Attorney General, attorneys from your office handled the appeal of my son, Jordan Davis's murder, which was denied. As a result of the efforts of those attorneys under your watch, the court actually upheld the life sentence for a man who used prejudice as his defense for murdering my son and scarring his friends for life. Attorneys from your office, under your management, worked hard to remove a dangerous man from the community who terrorized innocent people like my son and his friends. The compassion and respect that my family received throughout that ordeal were critical in helping us keep faith in the rule of law and justice. Based on my experiences, I have seen how strong victim services, sustained investigations, and well-supported prosecutors can make a meaningful difference in the lives of families who are grieving and suffering. Ms. Bondi, just yes or no, would you agree that government officials should be respectful and supportive of victims' families as they mourn?
First, Congresswoman, thank you for talking about that, and I'm so very sorry for what happened to your family.
Thank you.
And yes, I agree with that with all victims, including the ones sitting behind us today. I absolutely do. And
Okay.
also, thank you for voting yes on the Lake and Riley Act.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so your answer is why the recent treatment of families in Minnesota raises really serious concerns for me. Because shortly after Mr. Alex Preddy was murdered, administration officials referred to him as an assassin and called Mr. Preddy the definition of domestic terrorism. They also lied about Mr. Preddy holding a gun and threatening officers. After Ms. Renee Good was murdered by ICE officials in Minneapolis, administration officials also accused her of being a domestic terrorist and investigated her wife in a clear act of retaliation. The statement Mr. Preddy's mother made after the murder resonated with me more than you'll ever imagine. She said that, and I'm quoting, "The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting," end quote. And I assure you, I know how it feels to hear lies that are told to justify the taking of someone's son. They were used by my son's murderer as a defense, and those lies still affect me today. He was called a thug, and he was called a gangbanger. And the attorneys from your office actually defended my son's name, his memory, and defended his honor. I'm certain that Mr. Preddy's mother watched videos of her son, Alex, an ICU nurse at the VA hospital, using his phone to record federal agents. She also watched him getting pepper sprayed, kicked, hit in the head, and surrounded by at least 7 agents before having his gun removed from his waistband, which he legally carried. And she watched seconds later as 2 of those agents shot her son Alex at least 10 times. Administration was quick to spew an incorrect narrative and call him so many things that they wanted us to ignore the truth that we actually saw with our own eyes. Ms. Bondi, will you denounce the statements that were made to tarnish the names of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and will you protect their names like those attorneys back in Florida under your watch protected my son's name?
What I will say is we are looking at everything to shed light on what happened that day, and it is an ongoing and active investigation. Both of those cases, and I assure you they will be investigated.
Investigating, we understand that, but will you do everything in your power, as you have done for my case, as you are asked to do, as you've sworn an oath to do? It is your responsibility to make sure that you are following the rule of law. Those families in Minnesota, they deserve the same respect. They deserve a full investigation, which you have not even begun to do yet. So what are you saying, is that they don't deserve any respect for a full investigation into their murders?
Well,
that
that's
is
not
incompetence on your behalf.
Well, that
the
is not
American
accurate.
people do deserve better. Non-commitment to defending the rule of law is what we see from you.
I
will
told you we
always
were
stand up for
investigating.
survivors, and I heard you say earlier when you told us that you will fight for them as well. And based on the information before us, these families have not received the same commitment to investigate what happened to their loved ones, nor have they received the respect that I would expect from the nation's top law enforcement officer. Investigations have been slow-walked, they've been canceled, and the special agent assigned to Renee Good's investigation resigned following pressure from your officials to reclassify Ms. Good's case.
Time of the gentle
For
lady.
families seeking answers and accountability, the withdrawal of investigative resources is simply unacceptable.
Has expired. The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Attorney General, I get the sense that we've lost a little perspective here. The most fundamental responsibility of government is to protect the lives and property of its citizens. Now, you cited some crime figures in your opening statement, and I wonder if you could repeat them, because I think it's one of the most extraordinary achievements of the Department of Justice in our history, and I don't think some of my colleagues heard you clearly.
Thank you, Congressman. And would you mind if I address something that
Go right
Congresswoman McBath wouldn't let me address first?
Go right ahead.
The reason that she wants to continue to talk about Minnesota, which we will all day long, is she doesn't want to talk about her own jurisdiction in Atlanta, because she doesn't want to talk about Christopher Welcher, who traveled across state lines to try to meet, and nothing's funny about this, to meet and molest a 14-year-old girl in Georgia. That's why they're watching the clock, the American people should know, for the second it runs out, because they don't want to address anything in their jurisdiction. They're elected to represent people in their jurisdiction. We prosecuted illegal aliens who ran a large-scale meth operation in the Atlanta metro area.
You understand we don't prosecute,
Madam
right, Ms. Bondi?
Madam Attorney General.
On the law,
I'm sorry, thank you.
Mr. McClintock.
So yes, the statistics I spoke of earlier, Congressman, under the leadership of the FBI, historic work has been done. A drop 20% in the nationwide murder rate in 2025. Least murders in our country since 1900, and that is to the work because of the credit of Donald Trump.
It's not just homicides, is it? It's also other violent crimes, robbery. Could you go through that list real quick?
Yes, Congressman. 100% increase in violent crime arrest in 2025 compared to 2024.
What's that done to the violent crime rate in the country?
It's plummeting. 1,800 gangs.
Wait a second. Do you mean to honestly tell us, and you're under oath, that if we take violent criminals off the streets, we end up with less crime?
I certainly hope so, Congressman, and that's our goal, and that's
an
President Trump's
extraordinary concept, and I'm afraid it may be lost on some of our Democratic colleagues. I look at these numbers, and they're absolutely staggering. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because of specific policies that you've implemented this year. And you mentioned a few of them. Would you continue?
Over 6,000 child victims located, 22% increase. Over 1,700 child predators arrested, 10% increase. Over 300 human traffickers arrested. Let me jump down to DEA right now. That was just FBI. Under Terry Cole's leadership, and I talk to these people almost daily, our directors, and the amazing work that they're doing in all of your jurisdictions on the left and the right, working together to take drugs off our streets.
Right, and I assume that our Democratic colleagues, some of whom represent some of our most crime-plagued cities and communities, have thanked you for this extraordinary accomplishment.
Thank you, Congressman. We've seized more than 9,800 kilos of fentanyl and 47 million fentanyl pills. That affects every single person in this room. It doesn't matter what political party you are. Everyone in this room knows someone who's died from fentanyl. A parent, a child, a sister, a brother, a friend, a neighbor, a relative. Everyone here knows someone who has been impacted by that. That is the common ground that I wish we could find to work together in this country, to take these drugs off the streets. And someone nodded with vapes.
Well, in your opening statement, you said that this historic success in protecting the lives and property of Americans has occurred when local governments have cooperated with you.
Yes.
Let me ask you, what are the greatest impediments you're facing in bringing down crime across the country?
Well, when local governments, of course, do not cooperate with us, and that's where criminals flee, in jurisdictions where they know they will be protected by local governments. And this is all about working together, and we have shown that in what we did in D.C., what we're doing in Memphis, working together with Democrat mayors in these cities, right here in D.C.
And very quickly, if you could tell us about the Safe Cities program and give us your read on what cities that avail themselves of this program can expect?
Yes, so far, of course, we've been working in Washington, D.C., right here to do everything we can, working hand in hand with the mayor, with Metro PD, to keep everyone safe in D.C., and it's been a tremendous effort. And now we're in Memphis, working with the mayor in Memphis, as we talked about earlier, doing everything we can. These are iconic cities in our country, and we want to help every city in this country who wants and asks for President Trump's help to make America safe again.
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair, I have, you see.
let the record show that Democrat was applauding the Attorney General's answer there. A unanimous consent?
Yes, please.
All right, the gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I have a few unanimous consent requests. I would like to submit into the record this New York Times article titled Alex Pretty's Friends and Family Denounce Sickening Lies About His Life. I also would like to submit this Daily Mail exclusive interview with Vice President J.D. Vance titled J.D. Vance Refuses to Apologize to Alex Pretty's Family After Spreading ICE Assassin Claim. One more. My last submission request is a New York Times article titled FBI Agent Who Tried to Investigate ICE Officer in Shooting Resigns.
Without objection.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, I think you and pretty much everybody else here and throughout the country believes that convicted sex offenders don't deserve special treatment or privileges in prison. And yet Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, received perk after perk in prison. In July, she had a 2-day interview with your deputy and President Trump's former defense attorney, Todd Blanche. Just days after that, Maxwell was transferred from a federal correctional institution in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, which she, as a sex offender, would normally be ineligible for. At this new facility, as the ranking member talked about, and by the way, it's nicknamed Club Fed, we've heard reports that she's been afforded special privileges: puppy time, private workouts, personal mail, secretarial services. Attorney General Bondi, does a convicted sex offender like Ghislaine Maxwell deserve special treatment and privileges in prison? Yes or no?
Let me be crystal clear on this. No. And
Thank you.
Let me keep going. No, let me keep going.
Perfect. Well, I
did not know she was being transferred.
I asked you yes or no.
She was not transferred to a lower
Mr. Chairman,
level.
please stop the clock and remind the witness of the rules. One rule she needs to understand
and I'm glad
here.
that we're agreeing. So when we're agreeing, we can move on to some other things.
When
but
we're
I
not
want you to
agreeing,
know that every time she does get these perks, and it's been publicly reported, that the folks she's abused, the survivors who are sitting here, they see themselves as being denied justice. They feel re-traumatized. And I'm glad that we agree on that. But she should not be in that prison. And she needs to be moved back to a maximum security prison as soon as possible. But what she has told another committee here is that she won't cooperate with them unless she gets clemency from Donald Trump. It's just crazy to consider that she can be wielding this kind of influence within the administration. But that begs the question, who ordered her to be transferred to the minimum security prison that she was ineligible for? Who signed off on the special privileges? Was it Mr. Blanche? Was it one of your other subordinates? So please, can you tell us who sent her there, since you don't agree she should be there?
I said I do not agree she should receive special treatment. She was transferred, I learned after the fact, to the same level facility, and that is a question for the Bureau of Prisons. I was not involved in that at all. The same level facility, I don't know why, but you know, instead of talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who hopefully will die in prison, you should be talking about Irina Zarutska.
I have a couple of
died
other
on a
questions.
subway.
Right, and I absolutely—
You don't talk about that.
I have been talking about it and actually helping with these issues. But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. So of course we're moving back to you. It is all about you. So as we've heard, she took the fifth in response to every single question in that committee hearing. And her lawyer dangled the offer of clemency. Should Donald Trump pardon or commute her sentence? Should she be released from prison, yes or no? You said you hope she dies there, so I'm hoping the answer is no.
I already answered that question.
Good. I'm very glad. I really like this bipartisan agreement about
when
what
it
should
agrees
happen
with
with
you.
her.
But you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You don't want to talk about
I talk about her
murdered
all
by
the
a
time,
violent crime
but
offender
I am not
in
here
your
to
jurisdiction.
testify before Congress. You are. That is your job today.
You are
That's what you're getting paid
obsessed
for.
with attack.
I want you to know that your own DOJ employee, he's recently been demoted and had some other problems, advises on pardons. Do you think he will be advising Mr. Trump on any kind of clemency or pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
I'm not going to speculate, and you couldn't even identify properly. That's why you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You couldn't properly identify her relative.
I absolutely
it's embarrassing.
Have been, and her family, by the way, appreciates all of the condolences, all of the help, everything that our law enforcement in North Carolina has been doing to help her family. Her family feels well treated. Thank you, and I yield back.
The lady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article by former Attorney General William P. Barr entitled, "Why Pam Bondi Didn't Publish All the Epstein Files in 30 Days." The answer is simple. It was not possible, from the Wall Street Journal.
Well said. Without objection, the gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. Yes. May I respond 20 seconds to something that Congresswoman Ross said?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. She also opposed a sex offender registry as head of North Carolina ACLU. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. And I'd like to pick up where you left off a moment ago, because we convene here today as a committee for the stated purpose of conducting oversight of the Department of Justice. And so it's critical for us to focus first on the mission of the department and assess your success in discharging it. So the mission of the department is to enforce federal law, defend the rule of law, and protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, drug trafficking, fraud, and exploitation, to promote public safety. And what we have heard today unequivocally is that President Trump's Department of Justice, under your leadership, Attorney General Bondi, is doing exactly that. Just a moment ago, you shared with us some incredible statistics that the United States, under your leadership, has achieved the lowest murder rate in 125 years. That in the first year of this administration, murder is down 21%, robbery is down 23%, carjacking down 43%, and gun assault down 22%. That is what public safety looks like. Under your leadership and that of President Trump, you've located more than 6,000 child victims of trafficking and exploitation, arrested 1,700 child predators, and apprehended more than 300 human traffickers. Significant increases. And those aren't just statistics. Those are precious lives that your department and the men and women of federal law enforcement have saved. Madam Attorney General, you've mentioned a couple of specific criminal trends during this hearing that I'd like to discuss with you further, because one of our important roles in Congress is making sure that our laws and our law enforcement stay ahead of predators as technology evolves. I lead legislation in the House along with bipartisan co-sponsors on this committee to make sextortion a clearly defined criminal offense. We actually passed that out of the House of Representatives. We have a bill to promote Operation Renewed Hope to help rescue more child victims, and the Defiance Act to provide legal recourse to victims of deepfake AI intimate images. I would love to hear your perspective and what you are seeing related to these technology-based criminal trends, sextortion and AI deepfakes. What are you seeing at the Department of Justice, and why do you believe that efforts to combat these types of crimes are important?
Sextortion, and thank you for supporting that, Congresswoman. I think that was a bipartisan effort, actually. I think many of you on both sides of the aisle supported that. Thank you for that. You know, as a career prosecutor, it's horrible seeing that and seeing that young women and often young boys have been exploited with sextortion. And I see, thank you, both sides of the aisle nodding on that. It's horrific. The suicide rates go up. And that's why we have to do everything in our power to protect not only young girls, adult women, boys and men from sextortion, because it is happening and we're doing everything in our power, thanks to your legislation, all of you, to stop that.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the Department of Justice programs like Project Safe Childhood and the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Forces, partnerships that bring together federal, state, and local law enforcement. Sometimes the work between those law enforcement groups together really creates some incredibly powerful outcomes and some great success stories. I know you, as Florida's Attorney General, had a tremendous amount of leadership in our state trying to make sure we were taking care of children, also the elderly, protecting them from fraud, ending drug trafficking. Tell us a little bit about some of those departments within DOJ.
Yeah, when you talked about Project Safe Neighborhoods, we've done a lot of that in Florida when I was state AG, and actually back when I was a state prosecutor prior to being Attorney General. That is so important. I feel like what we've been doing in DC too, with the Take Back DC and Make DC Safe Again, is similar to that. Going into the neighborhoods, working with the community, seeing law enforcement officers out there playing basketball with kids who live in the neighborhood. It's pretty remarkable what we've seen firsthand. Citizens in Memphis saying that they appreciate, they can walk outdoors now and they feel safe. People coming up thanking law enforcement and working hand in hand with them. We will continue all of these programs and working jointly with both sides of the aisle to keep our families safe.
Thank you for that, Madam Attorney General. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce for the record a letter to Director Gabbard from Mr. Warner and Mr. Himes, and a letter of response from her to them about who invited her to Atlanta, and a copy of the search warrant. And I'd also like to just make clear for the record, the reason people in Memphis weren't going out was because the ice was on the ground and we were afraid we'd fall. But other than that, we go out all the time.
Gentlemen, without objection, there's unanimous consent. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attorney General Bondi, according to your department, a child is sexually abused in the United States every 9 minutes. And the vast majority of survivors never get justice. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Epstein case has resonated so deeply with so many Americans. And the other reason, I think, is because it has revealed a two-tiered system of justice. And the powerful are protected and the survivors rarely get any accountability. And the Epstein files contain evidence of a multi-decade international criminal conspiracy involving some of the wealthiest and the most powerful people in the world. There's evidence of financial crimes, political corruption, sex trafficking, and of course, horrible sexual abuse. And I want to remind everybody, this isn't a game. These are real people, people who have suffered, who are sitting here with us today, and they deserve answers, and they deserve accountability. And I'm here to try to get some for them. Now, I've seen some of the unredacted Epstein files, and obviously, as you know, President Trump's name is all over them, but so are the names of other senior Trump officials: Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce; John Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy; and Stephen Feinberg, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These men were appointed by President Trump to senior positions in his administration. All of them have clear and confirmed ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Attorney General Bondi, yes or no, has the Justice Department asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Epstein?
Excuse me. Secretary Lutnick has addressed those ties himself.
I'm asking you, has the Justice Department specifically asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
He has addressed those ties himself.
Has the DOJ asked Secretary Phelan about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know whether he has addressed those or not.
Has the Deputy Secretary Feinberg talked to the Department of Justice about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no? Has the Department of Justice talked to Deputy Secretary Feinberg about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, which are clearly spelled out in the files? It's a very simple question. It's not a trick question. I'm just asking you.
Yeah, I'm stunned that you want to continue talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Epstein
Okay,
instead
I'm
of a Border
reclaiming my
Patrol
time. I'm
agent
asking
murder.
you not a trick question, a simple question. Okay, so what is clear is we have evidence.
Do you know who Chris Malin is?
We have evidence that 3 senior officials within the Trump administration have ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And what
does ties mean?
I can conclude
What does
from what
ties
you are
mean?
saying that you have not talked to them.
What does ties mean? Can
I
you
think
define
Americans would be shocked to learn that you are not interested in talking with these officials who have ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
What does
across
ties
the
mean?
world,
Can you define that?
across the world,
Can you
prominent
define
men
ties?
who've been
Time
exposed
belongs to the
in the files have resigned their jobs in disgrace, and that's a good first start. And that same
Disgrace is
standard,
not saying the word
this
Chris
same
Malin.
standard should apply here. And Americans want accountability.
Who is Chris Malin?
Was the president
he?
aware? Please stop talking. It is not your time to ask
was
questions. It is not your time. I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. Chair.
One second.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Vermont.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so
He
I'm
was
going to
shocked,
conclude
and
that
she
the president, in
never
fact,
mentioned
did
him
know about his
in
ties
her
because he
district.
was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic.
beautiful
This is
state.
pathetic,
The
Mr.
committee will
Chair.
be in order.
I am not asking trick questions here.
You
The
got your
American
5
people
minutes.
have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell. By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's Island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? Why are you not asking these questions? And I see that my time is almost expired, so I will say this. Do the right thing, Attorney General. Meet with the survivors. They have been asking for a year. Meet with the survivors. Do the right thing. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
May I have 20 seconds of his time?
That'd be up to the gentleman, but.
Absolutely, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you. I was curious if you, Congresswoman, asked Bill Clinton that. Didn't see one tweet, not one. I didn't see one tweet when Joe Biden was in office about Bill Clinton. Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once when he was.
Weak sauce.
Also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
is
Jewish.
I just want to be clear.
Do you want to go there, Attorney General? Or do you want to go there? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust?
I reclaim my time.
Really?
The committee will be in order.
Talk to Jared Wise about anti-Semitism.
The ranking member knows that.
Can I get like 30 seconds back,
Yeah, I've been.
Ballant took
I think
30
the whole
of mine.
committee knows. I've been very generous in
thank you.
making sure everyone gets their 5 minutes in the same.
General, I'm going to talk about sanctuary cities for a second, which limit the federal government's ability to enforce immigration law. They're kind of a new thing that Democrat jurisdictions are doing. They're in violation of federal law. During President Trump's first term, he rightly targeted sanctuary jurisdictions to try to force them to cooperate with federal immigration law. Federal immigration law, mind you, that was voted on in 1996, most recently, in a bipartisan Congress, signed by a Democrat president. But they are in violation of that law. These states and jurisdictions feel entitled to certain grants, of course. Y'all are combating that. Do sanctuary policies limit the federal government's ability to accurately estimate how many criminal illegals are in the country?
Yes.
Thank you. This means that the number of illegals could be higher, probably higher. Does this hurt the federal government's ability to carry out immigration laws designed by Congress?
Yes, Congressman.
In your opinion, do you believe that the Biden-Harris administration and Democrat pro-sanctuary policies make our communities safer and for the American taxpayer? Do sanctuary policies make our communities safer?
No, Congressman.
I want to do a brief video to highlight sanctuary cities. So what's strange to me, if you look at this board behind me, in New York, there are 7,000 criminal illegal aliens since January 20th of last year that have been released into the public because New York is not honoring detainers requested by ICE. California, similarly, has released 4,500 criminal illegal aliens. There are 33,000 under detainer in California alone. And of the people released, I think it's remarkable that those released in New York, 29 homicides, 2,500 assaults, almost 200 burglaries. These are people that are released into our community by these states that refuse to cooperate. Last August, Michael Jordan Castellano Fonseca, a criminal illegal alien with ties to Tren de Agua, shot 2 people in front of 5 children in the sanctuary state of Colorado. DHS lodged a detainer on him. He's awaiting trial, but the question is whether Colorado's sanctuary policies will prevent him from being removed from the country. Yes or no? Do you think that sanctuary jurisdictions, if they cooperated with ICE, those illegals in custody could be transferred to ICE properly instead of being held in taxpayer-funded jails and then released into our community?
Yes, Congressman.
Wouldn't it be more efficient and safer then if Democrats simply cooperated with the federal government, these sanctuary jurisdictions cooperated with the federal government and honored ICE detainers? And why? Why do you think?
Of course, because so many criminals are running to sanctuary jurisdictions. Many of your colleagues across the aisle who we've seen speaking today about Epstein don't want to talk about the illegal criminals in their own jurisdiction for that reason. And yes, we need to do everything we can to work together to make America safer, and they're not doing that.
This is not a partisan issue. People want to feel safe in their communities. Nobody wants a criminal illegal alien released into the street. I think the thing that maybe the American people don't quite understand is that when you do not honor a detainer, as we've seen, an illegal is released into the public, and now it's up to ICE to maybe apprehend them, rather than behind the courtroom
passing them off from one law enforcement to the next. Is that true?
Absolutely.
What do you think what is the Department of Justice doing right now to combat sanctuary policies in our country?
We're doing everything in our power, obviously, to combat that. Donald Trump is doing everything he can because we are going to make America safe. We are going to get illegal criminal aliens out of this country. We're going to get the gangs out, TDA, MS-13, all of the gangs in this country. We're going to get the drug dealers out and the drugs, and that's what we've been fighting to do. And I wish we could do it on a bipartisan basis, but they just can't do it.
And the decrease in numbers speak for themselves. Thank you for your work.
Gentleman's time is...
Mr. Chairman, we have some UCs, if that's okay.
That is okay.
Mr. Cohen.
Thank you. You see on the National Institute of Justice's study on undocumented immigrants having an offender rate lower than U.S.-born citizens. I'd like to enter this in the record from 2024.
Without objection.
And I have several myself, Mr. Chairman. The Guardian, January 26, 2026, why is Trump granting clemency to convicted fraudsters?
Objection.
January 20, 2026, NBC, Trump's pardons forgive financial crimes that came with hundreds of millions of dollars in punishment.
Objection.
Washington Post, December 19, 2025, Trump's pardons wipe out payments to defrauded victims.
Without objection.
And finally, May 30th, 2024, Trump found guilty by Manhattan jury on 34 felony counts of fraud.
Without objection. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, glad you finally made it here after hiding for 4 months from this committee. I understand why you're hiding from us.
Chairman?
You're one of the worst attorney generals in our history and an instrument of Donald Trump's lawless authoritarian agenda, and I'm glad the American people are seeing who you are, how you act, and the lack of good values. You weaponize the Department of Justice to target immigrants, working families, and anyone that Trump deems an enemy of the state, all to protect real powerful criminals, including in your administration. My Democratic colleagues have focused on your cover-up of the Epstein files and your passion for protecting pedophiles and child traffickers. That alone is grounds for impeachment. But there's so much more to your corrupt tenure as Attorney General. You directed prosecutors to investigate elected officials in welcoming jurisdictions, and you got thrown out of court when you sued Chicago, Cook County, and Illinois. You directed prosecutors to prioritize low-level immigration cases while gutting enforcement against corporate criminals and public corruption. You revived draconian law of 1798, which should be repealed to illegally send people to a torture prison in El Salvador. You fired over 100 immigration judges, including the assistant chief immigration judge in Chicago, without cause, and installed unqualified military judges whom you instructed to deny asylum in violation of the law. You prosecute the president's enemies like Jim Comey and Tish James while giving impunity to federal agents who are murdering and brutalizing and terrorizing constituents, including in Chicagoland, in my neighborhood. I saw it last year firsthand. You and Kash Patel covered up the murder of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in my district by ICE agents. You tried to investigate Renee Good instead of the ICE agent who murdered her, and you tried to cover up the murder of Alex Peretti by CBP agents. You bring fake charges against protesters like the Broadview Six and Marimar Martinez, whom your administration labeled a domestic terrorist. This is the Montessori teacher who lives in my district, while protecting thugs who terrorize us and DHS authority. That's what you do. Protect and enable the criminals who are plundering our society and destroying what's left of democracy and the rule of law. Epstein accomplices, mass DHS thugs, corporate criminals, Tom Homan, Eric Adams, insurrectionists, the list goes on. And you talk about fighting crime, but you protect any criminal who helps you and Trump turn our country into an authoritarian gangster state. And after all this, nobody supports you. I'm not talking about Democrats. I'm talking about conservative judges who are condemning the rampant lawlessness at DOJ under your leadership. Your prosecutors are quitting in droves over being forced to prosecute low-level immigration cases, including in Chicago.